I began my journey in this health freedom space at the University of Michigan School of Public Health in 2023. I needed an internship to do some research, and I reached out to every single professor. One of them said yes. It took about a month to receive that yes. So in the meantime, as I was trying to get an internship, I reached out to Dr. Peter McCullough, and he responded in 5 minutes with an internship idea, a research idea. And what that ended up being, because, well, first of all, I went into the University of Michigan for epidemiology training. I wanted to make a difference, particularly given the disaster that we faced in 2020, 2021, and on. And that internship ended up being a systematic review of autopsy findings in deaths after COVID-19 vaccination. So at the center of University of Michigan, I was doing research looking at deaths after the COVID shot. And that angered many professors. I was told I would never have a career, but I didn't care. I did it anyways. And so I'm very happy I did. That paper eventually was published in Forensic Science International. It became the #1 most accessed paper according to the Observatory of International Research, about 2 weeks after it was published. And then 2 weeks later, the journal cartel is what I call it, retracted it for unethical reasons, probably illegal. And so that happened. And then it was republished a second time, thankfully. So right now it's up. It's been peer-reviewed 2 times. We basically demonstrated a causal link between COVID shots and death. So after that, since then on, since I graduated, I was able to now contribute to the publication of about 25 scientific studies looking at the harms of vaccines, the possible causes of autism, childhood vaccines, COVID shots, SARS-CoV-2, bird flu, etc. And so, yeah, that's my story. For somebody that's never heard anything about vaccines, what can you tell them that might, convince them otherwise of what might be occurring? Well, directly injecting 72 doses or 50 injections of toxic materials directly into a 6-month-old infant, small children undergoing critical neurodevelopmental periods, injecting them with aluminum, with formaldehyde traces, it's a carcinogen, with polysorbate 80, it's organ toxic, as well as fetal DNA fragments. There's trillions of fragments of fetal DNA, human DNA from an aborted fetus from the 1960s in the MMR shot. So injecting all of that stuff into a small infant will not improve health outcomes. It's not possible. So that's the first thing to consider. And then the second thing is to really tell if the vaccine is affecting a child's health, you do have to compare the vaccinated children to completely unvaccinated children. And there's been about 13 studies now that have done that. And as Del pointed out earlier on in the presentation, they all found the exact same thing. They all found that the vaccinated children are far sicker across every single domain. And the most important study is an inconvenient study, the Henry Ford study, because it's the best one so far. 18,000 children tracked from birth to average age 10. And literally, every single category was worse off in the vaccinated children. And the shocking point is, though, so right now 40% of American children have at least one chronic disease. Well, in the Henry Ford study, 57% of the vaccinated children developed at least one chronic disease by age 10. So it's a very similar type of prevalence there that we see. And we actually published a peer review and reanalysis of the Henry Ford study, and we just looked at the raw proportions. And in all 22 of the chronic disease categories, every single one, they were higher in prevalence in the vaccinated children, including cancer, autism, neurodevelopmental disorders were like 12 times higher, autoimmune diseases, skin disorders, everything under the sun, learning disabilities, speech delays, tics, ADHD. So this is a very serious situation. And, we really have to start commissioning these vaccinated versus unvaccinated studies. But in the meantime, the answer is quite obvious. These childhood vaccinations that we've been just injecting unlimited amounts into our children have significantly contributed to America's chronic disease epidemic. And we looked at the death reports after MMR and MMRV vaccination and the vaccine adverse event reporting system. And we compared those death reports, the amount of those death reports, to measles infection deaths. So we looked since 1995, and since 1995, there has been 2,600% more MMR and MMRV vaccine death reports than there have been measles deaths. And so it's absolutely absurd. We should not be, 2,600% more children should not be dying from a vaccination program. It's absolutely ridiculous. So that means for the past 30 years, it has functioned almost as a death program. It's not working. It's a disaster. A vaccine should never kill more than the disease, never. So they got to think of something else to do with that. And these children particularly, most of these deaths, there was about 300 of them. Most of these deaths occurred within 2 weeks after the vaccine. Most of them were between 1 year old to 1.5 years old, right when they get these shots. And they died of cardiac arrests, sudden infant death syndrome, seizures, encephalitis. And so the clinical presentations were all matching up. The temporality is matching up. And we identified a significant mortality signal with these shots. And so we put it up on the preprint server. We put it up on ResearchGate. And ResearchGate deleted it because they said it was a threat to public security or public health. Yeah, so this censorship cabal or whoever owns these journals and ResearchGate, there really needs to start being investigations into these entities or individuals, because that is the true threat to public security and public health, to just delete studies. I just want to start off with saying, raise your hand if yourself was injured by a COVID-19 vaccine, or you know a family member or friend who was injured. Yeah, so basically the entire room. Now raise your hand if one of your friends or family members died, likely from the vaccine. Yep, so that just goes to show, that's about half the room. So it's a very serious situation. People's families have been shattered. People's grandparents, parents, children have been killed by these so-called vaccinations. They're gene therapies. The mRNA shots they're not vaccines. They literally go to all of your vital organ systems, and and the mRNA tells those vital organ systems to make non-human, highly pathogenic proteins. So that's a very bad idea. Recently, a study by Otto and colleagues out of Japan found the vaccine mRNA and spike in brain tissue in hemorrhagic stroke patients, so it gets in the brain. Crossan and colleagues found it in the heart. Bowmeyer found the spike protein in the heart. And a paper came out 2 days ago that found the spike protein and vaccine mRNA in placentas. About 30% of women who were vaccinated and were not infected during pregnancy had the spike protein in their placenta and fetal immune cells. So it's getting in there. It's transferring through the placenta in pregnant women. And we also know that the shots have decimated unfortunately, some women's reproductive capacity as well as men's. An animal study came out last year by Karaman and colleagues. They injected rats with mRNA shots, and it destroyed 60% of their non-renewable egg supply, the primordial follicles. So once those go away, they don't come back. So you do not want 60% of those gone. And then also a paper by Manichi and colleagues looked in humans, 1.3 million, I believe in the Czech Republic, and the vaccinated women had 33% lower successful conception rates compared to the unvaccinated women. So we're seeing it in human data, and it's an absolute travesty. And I just want to mention one last thing. So we mentioned death. About half the room raised their hand saying they know somebody who died. Well, we verified that these COVID-19 injections do result in fatalities. They do result in deaths of human beings. And I briefly mentioned it in the first talk, but we did do a systematic review of 325 peer-reviewed autopsy cases so the individual died, had an autopsy, and they received a vaccine. So there's 325 of those published globally. We looked at all of them, adjudicated all of them. Were they from the vaccine or not? Looked at their clinical vignettes. When did they get the last shot? What did they die from? And we found that 73.9% of those deaths were from the vaccine. So unfortunately, yes, they are deadly. Class 1 FDA Class 1 recall should have happened years ago. It's exceeded past vaccine withdrawal limits by like hundreds of thousands of percent. And so basically our regulatory agencies have lost their minds. And sorry, one last thing, this is very important. There's now about 4 independent estimates of American COVID-19 vaccine deaths. It ranges from about 470,000 from Pfizer alone up to 840,000 American deaths from the COVID-19 vaccines. We have to remember that is rivaling the American soldier death toll of World War I, World War II, Vietnam, and the Iraq War combined. So this is very serious. The public mood has changed quite drastically, I would say, from 2021 to now 2026. I think the majority of Americans understand that the COVID-19 vaccines are dangerous. A Rasmussen survey came out a few months ago and found that I believe over 56% of American voters believe that the COVID-19 shots caused mass deaths. So it appears it's now in the majority. But we're seeing now some state legislatures taking action where the federal government has failed regarding these products. And in particular, recently in Idaho, I recently testified at the Idaho State Legislature for a bill that would put a moratorium on these COVID shots for children and pregnant women. And we have great news. It passed the first committee vote, so it's moving forward. Now it's going to go to the House floor, and we're very hopeful that this will get through, be the first moratorium in the country to stop these for the most vulnerable. They should be stopped for everybody, but we got to get something through. So there's that. And I think once one bill goes through, any sort of legislation, ban, moratorium, it will lead to a chain reaction of other states following suit. And eventually they will be removed from the market. But I just want to bring up, you mentioned we did some studies. Yeah, recently we had a Dr. McCullough's patient. He underwent 200 laboratory tests. He visited over 100 specialists, specialty appointments, and he developed long vaccine syndrome. So he took the Pfizer shot in 2020 one. He took 3 doses. He's 50 years old. And he got myocarditis. He got a pulmonary embolism. He developed neurological disturbances. He developed skin disturbances, gastrointestinal diseases. So basically, his whole body began to fail. So he went through all those tests. They excluded everything. And so there was one answer left. It was the vaccine. And then what happened was we collaborated with the Inmodia lab in Germany. He shipped probably 15 tissue samples. Nobody's been analyzed. No single human's been analyzed this much for vaccine components. And so shipped the samples off. What was identified was 3.5 years after his last shot, there was spike protein in his exosomes, in his skin tissue. 3.5 years after his last shot, no nucleocapsid, by the way. So the immunohistochemistry, no virus indications at all. So it's probably most definitely from the vaccine. But they also found plasmid DNA fragments in the skin, including signals of SV40, as well as the spike encoding regions. This appeared to be in the skin tissue of this individual 3.5 years after his last shot. And then there was a signal of possible vaccine mRNA in his circulating exosomes 3.5 years later. And so this genetic material from these shots appears to last for years, for many years. It may be integrating in these individuals. We got to really get to the bottom of that. But yeah, that's that. And then one last thing I want to mention, this is important. Kevin recently touched on the clots. This is very serious. A study came out that about, I think in October, that looked in what they claimed were long COVID patients. There was 85 of them. What they didn't mention was 94% of these so-called long COVID patients were vaccinated, right? So probably most of this is long vaccine syndrome. They didn't test these individuals for any prior infection. They just assumed they had long COVID. They looked in their blood, these 85 individuals. They found circulating amyloid microclots in all of them, ranging various sizes. Some were kind of big, some were microscopic, tiny, but it was in every single one of them. And so you could say 100% of the COVID vaccinated in that study had circulating amyloid clots, and this is probably from the spike protein exposure. It's probably can happen with the infection for sure. We don't know which one's going to be more severe with this, but this material, these clots, they're kind of these monster clots, misfolded fibrin. They can't break down. They're filled with biologically active materials, DNA, what's called NETs, the nets. They're just kind of circulating around. We believe that this is actually what's making up the long, white, fibrous clots being pulled out of corpses across the globe. Former Air Force Major Tom Haviland has reported this every year in global surveys. He's talked to all the embalmers. They are pulling out anomalous clots from deceased individuals. So very, very serious situation. They have to be delivered into the cells somehow, like they were just talking about. The lipid nanoparticles, it doesn't matter what it's for, cancer or, the flu, those particles, they're going to get into all your vital organs again. And they're going to start to express these foreign proteins, and your own body's going to attack it. And you're going to face disastrous consequences as a result. And so we've seen this mass experiment at a wide scale. It's, again, resulted in mass casualties, millions upon millions across the globe, millions of Americans injured, disabled, or killed. Right, so I don't know if we should just be running full steam ahead with all of this messenger RNA anymore. So I think it's doomed, to be completely frank. I don't think anybody's going to be taking these other mRNA injections. But we have to remember, 8%, the latest CDC data, 8% of American children received the latest COVID mRNA booster. So that's 6 million American children, including 6-month-old infants. So, I mean, that should qualify as mass negligent homicide if they die or become, it's absolutely absurd. So it's an ethical imperative to stop this madness once and for all. I mean, come on, yeah. They're now cooking up, personalized AI mRNA injections for cancer developed within 48 hours. I'm not going to take that because the same, all of this, they have to be delivered into the cell somehow, like they were just talking about. The lipid nanoparticles, it doesn't matter what it's for, cancer or, the flu, those particles, they're going to get into all your vital organs again. And they're going to start to express these foreign proteins, and your own body's going to attack it. And you're going to face disastrous consequences as a result. And so we've seen this mass experiment at a wide scale. It's, again, resulted in mass casualties, millions upon millions across the globe, millions of Americans injured, disabled, or killed. Right. So, this, I don't know if we should just be running full steam ahead with all of this messenger RNA anymore. So I think it's doomed, to be completely frank. I don't think anybody's going to be taking these other mRNA injections. But we have to remember 8%, the latest CDC data, 8% of American children received the latest COVID mRNA booster. So that's 6 million American children, including 6-month-old infants. So, I mean, that should qualify as mass negligent homicide if they die or become, it's absolutely absurd. So it's an ethical imperative to stop this madness once and for all. I mean, come on, yeah.